Hey guys, glad you could join me. Thanks for tuning in. I have something special inside the box here. I'm sure you can see who that's from. And I'm going to be going ahead, taking it out of the box, unboxing it, and showing you guys some of the accessories and features that go along with this item. But you guys stay tuned to see what it is. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and reveal what's inside. Ready? Ready? Oh. It is the Evga X299 for the Win K motherboard. These boards, along with all of X299 from Evga and some of the Z370 series, have been pretty hard to come by so far. But we got our hands on one thanks to Evga. This has actually been sponsored for our CES mod, the mod of steel, our Superman theme mod that we did for CES 2018. First thing inside the package here. Never mind, we don't need to talk about that. Almost forgot what it was. So let's go ahead and get the cellophane off. The one thing that I really like about how Evga does their products is the front's very simple, straightforward. Just for the Win K, Intel chipset X299. Intel supports Intel Core X series processor, supports Intel Optane ready memory, NVIDIA SLI ready, and then you can use your mobile device to scan this little code here to get more details on the product. So it would take you right to the product page, which is pretty cool. Helps people get some support right from the front. On the rear of the box, it just goes over some of the features. 8-layer PCB, high gold content for the CPU socket, 3-way SLI support, Intel Optane 14-phase PWM, a U.2 NVMe support, M.2 support, and then onboard power and reset buttons. So there are multiple options for NVMe and M.2 SATA drives to be plugged onto this motherboard. We have a lot more specs here. Some of the key features is the digital VRM, highly efficient digital VRM. The EVGA Elite X tuning utility. What else do we have here? And some other stuff. 150% increase in CPU gold content. So we can see that they're constantly working to evolve their products. Again, here we have on the side here, the Intel onboard CPU temperature. So the little LED diagnostic that's on the motherboard is a diagnostic if you're having problems. But once the system's up and running and in Windows, it becomes a LED display for your CPU temperature. The tuning utility, again, the passive chipset Heatsink, and some of the other stuff that we already talked about. 100% solid state capacitors. This was something big in the past as everything kind of transitioned to the solid state capacitors, but in most high-end boards now we do see that 100% solid state capacitors. So let's go ahead and open it up, see what's inside. There are I think better ways to get this outer packaging around the inner packaging, because this I kind of feel like I'm gonna break it to take it out of there. But then once we get to here, it just opens really nicely. And of course we see all of our accessories on the top here, and the motherboard is underneath. So let's just go through those very quickly. We have our CD, our case badge, and our in-depth owner's manual. We'll put that off to the side. In these nice little packages, here's our I/O shield. We have some SATA cables. This looks like an M.2 thermal pad. What do we have in here? This is our FTW motherboard RGB. We're going to take that out and show you guys that in the video. Another M.2 thermal pad, which I'll be utilizing all of those. And this looks like a bracket for maybe an M.2 drive. So then, alright, we have a hole here. We can just open that up, get this top portion of the box out of the way. and we get to the motherboard underneath. Let's just leave that like that. Here's some things that we're not going to go over anymore that I can set back in here. We don't care about the I/O shield and little brackets and thermal pads. And we can put that off to the side. Or on the floor, either way. So let's go ahead and get this open and take a look at the motherboard itself. This is an EATX motherboard. What does that really mean? Well, cases will support EATX, but EATX is the same mounting as ATX motherboards. So the mounting holes for the motherboard on an ATX and an EATX are the same. The thing about the EATX that we can see here, and I'll stand this up and show you guys, is that there's extra on the board over here. Normally, where this hole is, it's about where the end of the memory slots are. The motherboard would stop just shortly after that hole. Instead, we have about maybe another inch or so past that. So the extended ATX motherboard, this one, some don't. Some are normal ATX size. I don't know why they call them EATX. But this one actually is 1 inch wider. So if your case, after your mounting screws here, curves out, like I know some have in the past, this may be an issue with mounting. So you want to make sure that when you're buying a motherboard, you know what's going to fit inside your case, whether you need the EATX or you need the ATX. It's very important. We have our nice heatsink here. Let's go ahead and get this peeled off. If there's a place for me to start, if not, I'm going to leave it because some of these are just difficult to peel off. Okay, there we go. No, see, like that, just comes apart in pieces. See if I can get it for you. Oh, there we go. Oh. Guess after you've done that a couple hundred times, it's not as exciting. This one is kind of sticky too, so it's kind of stuck around these edges that I can't get my hands in on. You do want to remove those, and I'll tell you why. Because this little heatsink here is going to get warm, and when it gets warm, it's going to melt that plastic on if you didn't remove it. It also will hinder airflow. So if you leave that plastic on, you're not going to have any airflow over that little heatsink. So it's just going to get hotter and hotter. It's actually going to hurt the performance of the motherboard. So you do want to make sure that you get these removed, and I just like to do it as soon as I look at them so I don't forget. It's kind of like the plastic that'll be underneath your air-cooled heatsink for your CPU. I just remove that as soon as I see it because I don't want to forget, get working down the line, mount the motherboard, forget about it, and then you're smelling burning plastic or something's overheating. So I make sure to get these off just right away, even if they're difficult. Just something I've learned, and then we don't make the mistake and leave them on and cause ourselves issues down the line. So we do have 8 memory slots on this board. So we support our quad channel memory. We have our Intel X299 CPU socket and a little CPU installation packet that they've adhered, oops, to the little cover plate for the socket there. We'll leave that on because I don't want to expose that socket. I didn't think I was going to take the plate off with it. Wow, did they really glue that on there? Oh. I don't like that at all. You're pushing it into the CPU socket. Not that I think X299 was like that. Okay, we have 4 PCI Express slots over here for X16, but they work in specific ways. I believe for SLI support, we're going to want to use, only certain ones are going to work together. Like if we're using the top slot, I believe we cannot use the third slot because it won't recognize the graphics card. It's not made for that configuration. So it does support 3-way SLI in the first slot, the second slot, and the fourth slot. But the third slot can't be used if you're trying to run SLI because it won't recognize the graphics card. So I would suggest if you put them in the first 2 slots here, your cards are going to be close together. If you're water cooled and you're not running fans or air cooled, you don't really have too much to worry about with that because it's not really going to create extra heat because there's not anything dissipating off of the card itself. If you're air cooled, you probably, and are just doing SLI, you probably want to use the first slot and the fourth slot. That way it gives you an air channel between the 2 cards, so if you have airflow in your case, it can pull it up into that top card as well as the bottom card. So configuration, you always want to look into those things in the owner's manual or the BIOS before you get set up so that you don't have problems down the line after you're installing and wonder why your graphics cards aren't showing up. Same with your RAM slots, so which ones to use, and it tells us right here, populate in slots 1, 3, 5, 7 first, and so it gives us that right here on this before we peel this off our RAM slot, so we know which ones to put our memory modules in. The other thing on here is M.2 socket 1 is up here. I believe M.2 socket 2 is down here, and M.2 socket 3 is right here. So when you're installing your M.2s and you're looking in your BIOS for them, you want to make sure that you install them in the right portion. That's our little bracket that we have so that we could install a standing up M.2 here. And then also we have a BIOS select switch over here because it's a dual BIOS board. Our power reset button. Up at the top, our dual 8-pin power for our CPU, which on X299 we want to make sure we plug both of those in. And we have fan headers all over the place. We have a fan header here, 2 over in this corner here. Looks like another one there, and it's a 90, which is really nice. And 2 down here and another one over here. We also, of course, have our RGB connectivity to the board. If we were running high output graphics cards, a couple of Titans, maybe a couple of 1080 Ti's, and we were really pushing them, because your cards have your onboard power. This board actually has a 6-pin power plug here that if you needed more power to the PCIe lanes for your graphics cards, you can plug in right here to make sure that they're fully supplied. So if you notice that you're running the board and something seems a little bit weak, you might want to maybe populate that power supply so you're getting all the power you need to your cards. Over here, we have our LED indicator that I was talking about that'll turn into your CPU temperature display once you're up in Windows. You have your 24-pin. You have a vertical USB 3.0 header here, and I don't think this board has 2 USB 3.0 headers. No, just the one, but it is vertical. That's very nice. And then we have our SATA ports down here. We do have our BIOS chip, which might be removable. I'm not going to play with it, but it might be. And then we have on the back of the board, it just kind of looks ugly and blank back here. I don't want to say ugly, but it just looks like a lower end board. It doesn't have that nice big fancy cover over here. And that's what this is. So we'll go ahead and get this guy opened up. And we have 2 covers. There should be some screws down in here. Yes, there are. Now what's important about that is, and then there's screws separately in this baggie for the bottom cover. There are RGB sockets right here to connect these 2. One is right here and one is right here. So this cover can't be put on when the motherboard is already installed in your case because it has to actually screw in from, now this one's not a heatsink, so that plastic's not going to affect anything. I remove it anyway just because good habits. This one cannot be mounted if your motherboard's already in your case. Well, I should say it can be, but you have a hole here. Which way does this go? Like this? Yeah, I believe we have holes here that this is going to line up with that we're going to screw it in from the underside of the motherboard. So in order to get this guy mounted on, we're going to have to do it before we put our motherboard in our case. And we have our little RGB cable here, which I'm going to go ahead and plug in first. And it's always important to pay attention to those things because if you're like, I'm not going to put any accessories on, I'll just do it once it's inside the case, Then you mount the board in the case, and then all of a sudden you're taking everything back off because you didn't get to put these two little bracket covers on, or I/O covers, however you want to call them. And they round out the RGB on the motherboard that is controllable through BIOS. So we have the south bridge, our VRM, and then our two covers here over our sound and our I/O that all sync together. They all light up via the internal RGB of the motherboard. This is, I believe, EVGA's first board for onboard RGB. I could be wrong on that. Maybe the Z370s. I could be wrong on that. But I feel like I'm pretty close to not being wrong. Okay, so these two interlock, and they are going to use one screw here that you mount your motherboard to your case with. So you might need to find one that's a little bit longer, unless they include it. I'm not sure they do. And be careful that when you're tightening that down, you don't over tighten it so you don't break that plastic. So let me go ahead and get a little screwdriver. I think that's all we need is a little Phillips head screwdriver. Yep, and there's two screws in that one, there's one in that one. They do interlock together. So there's only one screw required at the bottom and two in the top, and that holds the whole thing on. Let me grab a screwdriver and we'll go ahead and get that installed and then round up our thoughts on the motherboard itself. So any little screwdriver will do the trick. An older one here. Always nice to have extra tools when you're working on things. So let's go ahead and stand this board up, get our little hole lined up there. This screwdriver is not magnetic, so I'm going to see if I can get this started or at least in place by hand. No. So here's one of those times, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, that you need 3 hands. Alright. Now it just kind of feels like this screw is kind of threading into the plastic. I don't believe that the plastic is tapped or has a metal insert. So we have to remember what we're holding on. We're just holding on a very lightweight piece of plastic, right, to cover the I/O ports on the back side of the motherboard. We don't need to use a drill and over crank this down or, you know, get it super tight because it's holding something that weighs nothing. All it has to be is in. I'm going to get it actually flush with my motherboard, snug, and that's it, because I can strip that out very easily. So that's something you want to watch for, because it's an easy way to ruin your day when you're working with your brand new motherboard and you get, you know, something cool and all of a sudden you strip that out. Would not be fun. Nope. No way I'm going to be able to open this little packet to get the screw out with one hand. So let's go ahead and just take a moment here. Very warm in the office. Here in Florida, the temperature fluctuates. Last week, man, we were going down to the 30s at night. Now we're back up to 70 and muggy and raining. Can never get good fluctuation. I don't have my fans on. I'm trying to reduce noise during the video. And we'll go ahead and get the third screw in here. Now once we do this, again, just snug, that's it, because it's not going to fall off. Just has to hold it on there. Now we have our rounded out motherboard. We have the nice plate back here that fits right in between all of these capacitors for our sound card down here. That matches our south bridge. Our south bridge has this nice heat sink that comes all the way up to our VRMs here. That matches our cover for our I/O sockets. So we want to make sure that we always have airflow in a case, even if you're water cooled, because all of these things need cooling. It's very important. They will get hot. I might actually remove these from the south bridge and the VRM via these few screws here and put some better quality thermal paste, or look at the thermal paste and see if it's good quality or not. Watch down in the comments, because I will put some information as I come across and start using the board more. It does have a built-in speaker on the board. You can turn that off via BIOS. And I really think that's about it. That's the Evga X299 FTW, or For the Win, K motherboard from, of course, our friends over at Evga. I just want to thank them again for sponsoring my Mod of Steel project for CES for 2018. And I want to thank you guys for tuning into this unboxing video. If you have any questions on the motherboard, or anything I talked about, or any specifications or features, or anything that you would like to know before you purchase this motherboard, please make sure to comment down below. If you haven't already, guys, please subscribe to the page. It really helps me out and in building the channel and being able to bring you guys more and more quality content. So I appreciate all of you guys that follow me now. I appreciate everybody that's tuning in. Once again, we'll take a look at this beautiful motherboard from Evga. Thanks for watching, guys. Until the next video.